שירו לדושם שיהיה חודש שירו לדושם כל
Shalom. Those who are familiar with the words of the Shema are familiar with the command that appears twice in the course of the Shema to put on tefillin. Ukshartam la'ot al yadecha v'ayu totafot b'neinecha appears more or less in that formula twice. You should bind them as a sign upon your arm and as totafot between your eyes. We're not sure what totafot means exactly, but the way the rabbis have interpreted this mitzvah, we attach these leather boxes and straps to our arms and put them on our heads every single morning as part of our daily routine. It's a beautiful mitzvah. It's a simple mitzvah. Inside the boxes we have parchments that contain the 4 passages in which the mitzvah, the commandment to do this, to put these straps and boxes on with the passages inside them, appear in the Torah. And yet it's a mitzvah that seems to have fallen into great neglect amongst the Jewish people. So I like to think of the mitzvah as it appears in the Shema as a pedagogic device, reminding us by connecting both our hearts here and our minds here that it's a pedagogic device that reconnects us to God by symbolically and physically attaching ourselves to the words, the teachings of the Shema. We're reminded of the uniqueness of the one and only God and of our special relationship with God. The great sage of the Middle Ages, Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi, both of whom lived in the 12th century, taught us that we should think of the tefillin as kind of a decorative piece of jewelry that one gets to wear, almost like our crown jewels. So we should wear them with pride and show them off and not only think of them as a pedagogic device. But in this week's parasha, Parshat Bo, there's another lesson. Because in this week's parsha we have 2 more psukim, 2 more verses, the other 2 passages that remind us of the mitzvah of tefillin, where we are taught, Vayalcha la'ot al yadecha u'zikaron b'neinecha, you shall put them as a sign on your hand and as a reminder on your forehead, in order that the teaching of the Lord may be in your mouth, that with a mighty hand, ki biyad chazakah hotziacha Adonai mimitzrayim, with a mighty hand the Lord freed you from Egypt. And then a few verses later it says, Vayalach halot al yadecha, and it shall be as a sign upon your hand, as a symbol on your forehead, that with a mighty hand the Lord freed us from Egypt. In other words, as Rashi teaches us, in this week's parasha, it's not only that the uniqueness and the oneness of God that tefillin are supposed to remind us of, but the fact that God freed us from slavery in Egypt. In other words, within the context of the commandments to observe Pesach each and every year, the commands to eat only unleavened bread each and every year, in commemoration of the exodus from Egypt and the miracles that God created for us in Egypt, we're also commanded to put on the tefillin, so that when we put on the tefillin each and every day, it's a commemoration no different from that which we do annually with friends and family and loved ones around the Seder table. That's a message that's especially appropriate for this particular weekend in the lives of Jews in America, when we commemorate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, a federal holiday, but a time of reflecting on the importance of the values which we have come to cherish both as Jews and as Americans. And a time for re-examining the relationship between the African American community and the American Jewish community. And here at Anshe Emet Synagogue, we will be engaged in doing that in a number of ways, starting on Friday night at our Friday night Anshe Emet live service, when Chazan Alberto Mizrahi will be accompanied by Reverend Chris Harris of the Bright Star Church. During the course of the service, our dear friend Pastor Chris is going to join Alberto Mizrahi in singing and in and adding to our service, uplifting our spirit with songs that will help us commemorate the legacy which is Dr. King's. And if it's Dr. King's legacy, then it is all of our legacy. It is a legacy that celebrates the rights of all human beings and the importance of freedom for all human beings. It is a legacy which began at Sinai and continued at Selma and Birmingham, and it is now the legacy which we all inherit and which we must pass on to all of our children and our children's children in America and everywhere. And it will continue on Monday when one of our rabbis, Rabbi David Russo, will spearhead a project at Bright Star Church with a number of our young people and adults, a day that we will engage in a community activity together to commemorate the legacy of Dr. King and also celebrate the inauguration of our president, because it will be the inaugural celebration on Monday when it happens to be Dr. King's birthday celebration. So we put on our tefillin every day, not only to remember the message that God is one and God is unique, but to remember that the teachings that God instructed us are the teachings of the importance of freedom, and that we as Jews and that we as Americans can share those teachings with our fellow Americans, and we can instill them in the lives of all Americans and all Jews. But we need reminders, so these tefillin, the tefillah shel yad, which we put in our hand near our heart, and the tefillah shel rosh, keeping close to our mind, bring heart and mind together to guarantee that this is a lesson that speaks to us both intellectually and emotionally, and especially at this time of the year. May we always cherish the freedoms that are the rights of every single human being. Shabbat Shalom.
שירו לדושם שיהיה חודש, שירו לדושם כל הארץ, שירו לדושם ברכו שמו, בסו מיום ליום ישועתו, שבתו מקום